there is magic in simple things, and actually while you're waiting for a complex, big, super, omega, giga thing, your life passes by. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert de Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. Now, I have to tell you that this video is absolutely unimportant because, and you can actually stop watching right away, because you already know what I'm about to tell you. Now, obviously, you don't exactly know what I'm about to tell you because you haven't watched it yet. Maybe you're watching it for the second time, I don't know. But what I mean is that whatever I'm about to tell you, you already know, most likely, like 99% probability, okay? And also, this video is gonna be very personal, so it may not relate to whatever your situation is. And I've been thinking about this recently for a while, and that's why I'm making this video, though I don't even have any real message in this video, if you know what I mean. I just only have a few ideas which seem to be related to the same topic, but I'm not even sure if that's the case, okay? And the topic is like the usual and unusual in life, specifically, okay? So you see, again, this is my personal take, so I don't know if that's true for you, but I've been waiting, so maybe it relates to my personality structure or whatever. I've been waiting for, you know, the big thing. Pretty much, like, my whole life is just waiting for some big thing, you know, some big moment, or something like that, you know. But the thing is that there is no big thing. Like, you know, life goes on, life passes by you while you sit and wait for the big thing. And that's kind of what I mean here, okay? Like, as one person actually eloquently put it, I mean, I understand it's a meme, actually, you know, this nothing ever happens. So you wait for the big thing, but the big thing never arrives. But while actual life is happening right beside you, but you don't even notice it, you kind of miss, what's the expression, the forest for the trees or whatever. While you're waiting for the big thing, the actual big thing, which is life, you know, but life consists of small things, but yet you don't notice it, it just passes by you, okay? So this is kind of the tragedy of life, if you wish, and this is what this video is devoted to. I'm not even sure how long it's gonna be, but nevertheless, I remember this moment when I was learning guitar, like when I was like 14 or 15. I was like looking into various, you know, forums, like where people discuss like various techniques, blah blah blah, like how do you learn this, how do you learn that, and there was a question from some dude who asked like, guys, I'm asking for, you know, experienced guitar players, like, how much practice do you really need to put in to make it? And some of the experienced guys looked at this and said, like, my dude, there is no it to make, you know? That was his literal answer. Like, he says, like, that depends what you mean by it. Like, what exactly do you mean? Do you want to play like Hendrix? Well, most likely you will never play like Hendrix, you know? Do you want to play just like a semi-decently for like a, even, you know, for some sort of like a stadium level rock concert? Well, that's a whole separate issue, you know? You want to play like Ingrid Malmsteen, that's a whole separate issue. Again, most likely you will never play like Malmsteen, etc., etc. So yeah, there is no it to make, right? There is no big thing that is ever going to happen, but rather, well, maybe you can rephrase it like this, just like I told, I think I said it in my video about like why modern art is so bad, where we discussed, link in the description by the way, where we discussed like what is art in the first place. It's whatever you kind of willingly perceive as art, right? So the big thing is whatever you want the big thing to be, right? Maybe brushing your teeth this morning is your big thing. I mean, you may perceive it as such, and as such, it may give you just as much pleasure as the real big thing. I mean, why not, all right? And this is kind of the moral of this video, if you wish. So when it kind of turns out, in most of cases, I would say that the smallest and simplest things are actually the most important things. Again, one of the, let's say, very obscure Telegram channels that I follow It's about some various esoteric stuff. So it actually says that magic, you know, is kind of all around us, actually, everywhere, you know, like whistling of an old kettle when you're waiting for your everyday tea. Like, this is magic, because why not? Why isn't it? You know, like, if you want it to be, it will be. Like, this is the beauty of magic, is that it's everywhere if you want to see it everywhere, you know. It's just like art, essentially. And what is, you know, how people call magic art sometimes, just art with a capital A. So yeah, that's kind of the point of this video, really. The big thing is an illusion, you know. It's an illusion given to us by various fictional media, you know. You have you were playing some sort of a game and you have a boss fight. Like, this is the big thing that you were preparing for the whole game, right? Or I don't know, there's some movie where you have something like a boss fight or some sort of big event that kind of finishes the whole movie. But that's not how things happen in real life, okay? In real life, it's just a bunch of small stuff that happens and then you kind of die, right? That's what life is, essentially. And thinking about those things just literally today, I thought about, like, why are we so focused on explaining these unusual events, so to speak? Whereas it looks like this is missing the forest for the trees, right? Like, we're trying to explain why earthquakes happen. But earthquakes are rare, relatively, right? Especially the strong ones. So what you really should have explained is why earthquakes don't happen most of the time, right? Because that's what the majority of time is time with no earthquakes, right? Or major solar flares. Why are we trying to explain when solar flares happen? Like, should rather explain why they don't happen, you know? Because that's the majority of what the sun does, is it's not flaring, you know? Like, we have it kind of all backwards on its head, sort of, right? Like, the most simple things, these mundane things, they are infinitely more voluminous, infinitely more important than the rare occasions when something happens in our, you know, everyday optic. Again, trained by media, by media I mean like science fiction or any fiction for that matter, or games or whatever, or music even, you know. You're like waiting for the cool chorus, you know. So you're just, when the verse is playing, you're just like, oh, come on, where's the chorus, right? We're waiting for the big thing. We're waiting for the in the chorus or whatever. So yeah, but if you think about it, like, it's kind of a miracle, right? Again, it's such a trivial point, it's kind of almost makes me sick making it, right? But every day is a miracle, right? If you think about it, like, why is tomorrow happening? Like, what the hell? Like, tomorrow may never have happened, but it keeps happening. Every day, tomorrow keeps happening. Like, what the hell? And if you think about it, it requires basically infinite energy, infinite everything to make stuff happen just as it kept happening previously, right? So this is what requires explanation, if you think about this, okay? So paradoxically, all these little things are seemingly matter, just seemingly matter the most, okay? And this is the source of this, you know, power of habit kind of thing, where, again, maybe you've seen this sort of quasi-mimetic picture where it shows like 1.01 to the power of 365 is equal to something like 38, and 0.99 to the power of 365 is something like 0.025 something, or something to that effect. So the idea is, if you improve 1%, but you do it every day consistently, you will become like 40 times bigger after the year have passed, right? Or if you decrease, like if you degrade a little bit, like 1% every day, then a year later you'll become like 40 times less than you are today, right? So that's kind of what I'm talking about here, right? Like life is a bunch of these small things, a bunch of mundane things essentially. And improving your mundane things even a little bit will improve your life exponentially almost, right? Something to that effect. Like, and you can look at it like magic almost. Again, you can make those things matter, right? Because while you're waiting for the big thing, like, you're kind of dying, you know, you're not doing anything. So remember this quote from Twin Peaks. Again, watch my video about Twin Peaks. Like, every day, once a day, give yourself a present, right? You may make every day magical. Again, I'm getting very, very sick even talking about those things. They're so trivial, but they are real. They are true, right? Aren't they? And again, as I've said, Twin Peaks itself is just a Disco Elysium in the form of series. Again, watch my video about Disco Elysium called Inland Empire. And I wanted to specifically also mention Disco Elysium in this respect, because I think it has achieved, like, why was this game so successful? Why was it so popular? I mean, it's still very popular. They're even making like a mobile version. It's probably gonna be some sort of crap. And also they're making like a sequel to it, with some of the characters from the original game. At least I've heard so. Anyways, so why was it so successful? Is because what was the main point of the game is that it dramatized, if you wish, the mundane. So there, every little interaction, every little like smell, taste, like some word, like every little dialogue is like a mini game. Like, it's very important, you know, like all kinds of things are happening, like all the time. Like you sense some smell and then you're like thinking about something, and all of this is gamified, you know, and like, I think this was the thing that this game has, succeeded in, is that it's showing this infinite magic of the mundane things, okay? Like the things you would not notice in your own life, but Disco Elysium kind of takes you by the hair and kind of, you know, puts your nose into it. Like, look, that's what's important, right? But it also made me think about one paradox, that, you know, maybe it actually also became so popular is because people are so detached from the real world right now. I know it sounds like old man yelling at cloud once again, but still, hear me out. People are so detached from the real world that when a game, I mean, people are living virtually mostly right now, right? So when a virtual medium, a game, shows them a real world, like it's finally amazing, you know? Basically, how do I formulate this? Like, it's at the same time a sort of like a substitute for the real world, but at the same time it's an appreciation of the real world, right? That this sort of emotional aspect of the game, like, it's very strong actually. Like, what does it show? That you are the same as the protagonist. You can have the same appreciation of your environment, for the lack of a better word, right? Of whatever happens in your life. Like, your own life might be just as the life of this guy who is absolutely unremarkable in every respect, pretty much, all right? So, yeah. Yeah. And then again, think about this. If the big thing actually happens, I don't know if this is your situation, but this is what I've felt most of the time when, and something approximating a big thing, again, as Jordan Peterson would have said, happened in my life. Like, you're like deafened and stunned, and like you're on adrenaline at the very least, right? You can't even perceive what happens properly. You're in some sort of altered state of consciousness, right? And your physiology screams at you. It says, this is not normal. What is happening is not normal, right? And therefore, like, hormonally and physiologically, you're in this, again, altered state, and you can't even be yourself, or whatever that means in this situation. So my point is, you won't be able to enjoy this big thing anyway, because that's not really you, because what really you are is the mundane you know? And during the big thing, it's gonna be someone else, so to speak, right? So, yeah. Well, hopefully you got my point, right? So, my point is, again, we should appreciate the mundane things, period. This is what this video is about, okay? But then again, if you treat every little mundane thing as a piece of magic, as something to put attention to, right? As something to pay attention to, rather, this is very uncomfortable, right? Because again, we need to be sort of a little bit stressed to be attentive, right? Because, well, people are lazy, obviously, right? So why would you put some attention into things, pay attention, sorry, to things which don't require you to pay attention to them, right? So it's kind of a not even counterintuitive, but rather counterproductive almost to pay attention to mundane things. And this is, again, the tragedy of habit and the tragedy of the mundane, I guess, again. So there is a big trade-off, right, where meaning requires decisions, meaning requires responsibility. And again, pleasure requires attention, just as well as pain, by the way. And if you pay attention, like that spending of your resources, so you're uncomfortable, you need somewhere to rest, right? You need somewhere to rest. But luckily, I mean, there's a place for optimism here, maybe. Like, you can actually pay attention in your real life, but in the virtual world, you may rest. Like, maybe that's the solution, but I don't really know how to put it into practice. But then again, I'm a philosopher. I'm not some sort of guru, right, to give you some practical advice. I'm just ranting here, okay? So, and there's maybe one last thing that I wanted to talk about is that, you know, again, essentially what I'm saying here by like dramatizing the mundane things, paying attention to mundane things, like capturing the magic in the mundane things, there is a sort of advice which I've heard a couple of times throughout my life, is that, you know, act as if you're in a movie, you know, like you're a hero in a movie. Well, you see, that's, again, the problem is that in the movie, they're constantly under some sort of stress and there's constantly some sort of conflict. So it requires you to spend the resources constantly. So there's this thing, firstly. And secondly, I have another comment on this, is that if you think about this, this has only appeared when secularization of society began. So people only acquired private life after the religion has already been, you know, pushed to the background, so to speak. What do I mean by that? So imagine we're in some sort of turbo religious society and people are like believing for real, like whether it's Christian or Muslim, doesn't really matter, or Jewish even, or maybe even Buddhist or whatever. Actually, any serious religion, like it would be true for it. So if you have a very religious society where people are believing for real, they don't have private life. Like, what do I mean by that? Is that their God, or gods plural, or like whatever principles like karma or whatever, they're constantly observing, right? So a person is, once again, like an actor or like a hero in a movie, where the viewer is their God, or gods plural, or again, some divine principles. You see what I'm saying? So it's only in the secular society that people have this, I only know the Latin word for this, otium, like an ability to relax, basically, you know, a safe space where they can like, just, you know, like, put off their clothes and there's just like, you know, like a zone of comfort, something like that, right? So this completely boxed off zone of private comfort where nobody is watching and they can do whatever they want. Basically, that's what I'm talking about. And modern society actually tries to increase this zone of comfort as much as possible, right? So yeah, but the religious societies were kind of absolutely not like this, where the God is watching whatever you do, right? So you better do something good. And this is kind of much closer to this ideal of appreciation of small things. Because again, if in some absolutely inconsequential interaction, as we would think today, like talking to a cashier or whatever, like you did some bad stuff, you know, like right now we'd say, it doesn't matter, like whatever, you know, it's a small thing. But that's your life. It's made of these small things, right? And religious people would kind of recognize that. Okay, I did something bad, you know. This is important, right? So there is this. And I think this is important, and this thing ultimately actually leads us, this secularization of these even smaller interactions and smaller things, it leads us to, well, significant lack of meaning in life, let's put it this way. Even if, again, all these gods and principles, they're all imaginary. Watch my video about how to believe in God in 2024, even though it's 2025 right now, I'm well aware of that. But still, even if these entities are imaginary, if you use them to this end, like to acquire meaning in your own life, then why not, you know? Like, there is a viewer who enjoys following your story, you know, following you as a protagonist, if you want it, of course. If you don't want it, there's no one watching you, okay? Remember Nietzsche's words, you know, that the world, I mean, most likely he took it from someone else, but something, again, Buddhist-esque or Hindu-esque, something like a world is a dream of a suffering deity, you know. So basically, a suffering god is kind of agonizing in their sleep and dreams up you know, something like that. So that's kind of a funny metaphor. But yeah. I also wanted to talk about how individuality is an imperfection, like, again, kind of talking about this being a hero in the movie or something. So what I wanted to talk about here, again, relating to the mundane things as opposed to the big thing. Okay, so in the big thing, you know, you have these archetypal heroes who do archetypal, almost caricature type of stuff, right? But real people, you included, right, are not caricatures and are not archetypal. Like, we are unique, actually, right? Again, as trivial and sickly as it sounds, we are unique, right? So no one else has your specific sickness, like this specific thing that you know about yourself and that you've learned to somehow live with, but no one else even understands it. And you know what I mean. You have it, like, you know, other people have their things like this, etc., etc. Perhaps many things per person, right? Whereas archetypes, again, they're only relevant because they're simple enough to become these relatable generalizations, right? Something like that. Okay, I think I've ranted enough. So long story short, there is magic in simple things, and actually while you're waiting for a complex, big, super omega giga thing, your life passes by, and perhaps it is worth learning to somehow make the small things matter. Like, again, religious people had their own way, like their gods were watching, so they were constantly in this state of almost like they're on a stage of theater, right? But maybe you can invent some other things to the same end. Or maybe you won't. I don't know. It's up to you. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing. If you wish to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. That is patreon.com/philosopher. See the link in the description. Or if you have a scientific theory of your own and you'd like my help in developing it, please join my alternative science coaching program, also available through Patreon.